Hey everybody, this is John from Packard Shutter with another video that is not about Packard shutters. This one was a request from Rudy Burden about the Komaflex S camera, of which I seem to have one of very few working copies in the world. I purchased this camera and it did not work, but I did some repair business on it that I'll get into later. And it is now fully functional. It has become one of my favorite 127 cameras. The lens is ridiculously sharp. It is better than my Sawyer's Mark IV or my Yashica 44 or my Yashica 124. It is just overall a great lens. The camera is nice. It's an SLR. You know, the lid opens up like that and you go through the lens. It shoots 127 film. It's kind of bulky for a 127 camera. It doesn't sit in the camera bag nice because this wind knob sticks out and the lens sticks out. It's probably almost twice as wide this way as say a Yashica 44 or a Raleigh, baby Raleigh. So it's bulkier than most 4x4 cameras, but I still like it because it's different. I like this kind of a interface, and it's got this amazingly wonderful lens on it. So when I'm going to talk about some of the things I had to fix when I got it, the unlock knob would, you know, right now it's like most twin lens kind of cameras. You turn it, I'm going to close that, you turn it and then this little foot flips up and then you can open the back. Mine would just spin and spin and spin and wouldn't do anything, and it ends up that there's a little pin and a groove inside this that the pin had broken off and I had to replace the pin. So I fabricated a new pin and put it in, and now it works. I've also found that on this one, I don't know if this is all the cameras of this model or just my particular one, but this lever can actually go too far, and it grabs this little ledge right here rather than grabbing, I'll zoom in a little bit, it grabs this little ledge instead of the groove where it's supposed to sit. So when you're closing it, you got to be careful that it goes into the groove and you can turn it all the way and really latch it rather than having it sit up there. Another thing that was happening on mine when I got it, I'm looking for something to point with, and my normal pointer stick is nowhere to be found. So I'll use a pen maybe. This is the frame counter right here, and my frame counter was very, very, very sluggish. It would move a little bit and you could jiggle it and get it to go, but it didn't want to snap back when you open to the back, snap back to zero like they should do. So that was off. The shutter speeds when I got it, oddly enough, the slow shutter speeds worked fine. You know, 1 second, 2 second, up to a 15th. They were wonderful, but you got above 15th of a second and they were all the same speed. So normally that's kind of the opposite. You find a camera that the fast speeds work and then the slow speed escapement's all gummed up and they don't work at all. But this one was the reverse. So anyways, I had to fix the shutter, do a CLA on the shutter. Let's see, what else did I have that was going wrong in it? Seems like there was something inside that just didn't want to work. I'll have to think about that for a bit. Anyways, so I got that fixed. One of the side effects of that was that I had to peel off the cover on this side, and it wasn't peel off. It was as soon as I tried to move it a little bit to get to these screws, it just kind of crumbled and fell off. So someday I will probably take this off and replace it. But, so that's the overview. What this is, it's a single lens reflex 127 4x4 camera. It's got a fixed lens. It's got speeds from 1 second up to a 500th. Shutter speeds apertures from 2.8 to 22. It's got a 2.8 lens. The only other baby, or the only other TLR, SLR style ones that I know of that have a 2.8 is the Sawyer's or the Primo Junior. I think the Raleigh is even a 3.5. Anyways, 2.8 lens, 65 millimeters, so a little bit wider than most of your little TLRs. No, a little bit longer. Most of those are 60. nice bright viewfinder. I mean, you're not gonna be able to see it on the video, but the viewfinder is really nice. It's pretty typical. It's got the, you know, the pop-up mirror and the speed finder. And now I got to figure out how to make the speed finder. Oh, there. Speed finder closes, mirror closes. It collapses. It's not really a single action. You got to push in on the sides and then a little bit, and then it'll close. On this side, just a cold shoe. On this side, this is your film winder. This is your shutter button. This is your shutter cocking lever. Your speed and aperture, they use the EV system, so they're locked together. This little tab here adjusts, changes that, or changes your aperture, depending on how you want to think about it. The scales could be easier to read. They're black letters on shiny, shiny, shiny reflective chrome, reflective aluminum, and so they're not the easiest things to read in the world, but it could be worse. The aperture readings are okay. They're white on black. And it's got a little depth of field scale here that is mostly useless. Anyways, so these are prone to failure. They have all sorts of warnings in the manual about don't do this and don't do that, or you can mung them up, and that is very true. This feels like in your hand like a very well-built camera, but when you're advancing the film, if you ever have had a Kiev 88 CM and you advance the film and it feels like you're grinding rocks, this one kind of has that sort of a feel, but not quite so bad. It does not feel like a precision machine when you're advancing the film. It feels like, oh Lord, something's about to go wrong. So as part of that, every time you wind the film with this, do it ever so gently. If the film advance is giving you any kind of resistance, stop, because something's probably going wrong. Anyways, loading the camera is pretty typical. I have this nifty roll of Perutz backing paper only. I've used it as a dummy roll. I have a slit roll of, this was Portra 160 that I slit and used, and this is now one of my dummy rolls, but it does not have the right frame markings because I slit it from 120, so I don't use that for my dummy one yet. Anyways, we'll open this up, and the loading is pretty typical. Your take-up spool is here, so you can see there's this little slot for the take-up, and this pulls out this. Oh, this is another thing that went wrong with mine. About the first time after I got everything working and put it all back together, I went to pull this out to drop the film in, and this thing popped out and the whole thing came apart. The way it's assembled is there's a piece from the inside that goes into the cap that gets peened over. It gets hammered over and deformed, and it had just let go, and so I had to repair that as well. So that was another little thing that went wrong. Anyhow, take-up spool goes up there. As someone noted somewhere online that I was reading about, this is an awkward camera and there's no good way to set it ever. That's pretty much true, except it sits on that side really nice. But like when you're loading, it's real easy to accidentally flip that up, so just be careful of that. On the plus side, the film snaps down into this little holder, pretty nice, and it's pretty secure. It's not going to go anywhere. You can pull this out. This is the wheel that they talk about for frame counting. It should spin fairly easy, which it does. And the paper has to be on that because it has some of the interlocks in all the stuff that this camera has to do when it takes a picture. Because it's an SLR, it works just like a Rolleiflex or a Hasselblad, where the shutter has to be open for you to view through it, and when you go to take a picture, it closes the shutter, flips the mirror up, closes down the aperture, opens the shutter, closes the shutter, and then on this one, that's just the end of it. After you take a picture on this, the mirror stays up, and the shutter stays closed, and you can't see through it. You can't do that until you wind the film and cock the shutter. So, anyways, I've got the film in here. I'm going to do the load spin a little bit, and I'm just spinning the spool right there. There's not any kind of geared number or anything. You can also use the film advance very gingerly. Just move it a little bit. As soon as it's tight or snug, close your thing, tighten that up, make sure it went in the groove and isn't stuck on the top. Then you look at the bottom, you turn this little lever, and this is your red window, but you only need it for frame 1. So turn that and then very gently advance the film until you see the 1. And don't get overexcited and crank away on this thing. You want to just go very gently. Okay, there's the little hands, and there was something, and there was a something, and another something, and there's a 1. So you do that, you're set at 1. You can release that. This is all ready to crank up to frame number 1. And it's slipping. Why is that slipping? Oh, that's why. Okay, so my frame counting is going to be off, but that doesn't matter because it's a dummy anyways. As soon as you get it to frame 1, you turn it this way, and this little lever is a frame counter reset. And here, we'll turn it a little bit so that it's, okay, see now it's at 1, but you pull that up, and this is what wasn't resetting on mine. It would go back like a half a frame or something. You pull that, it should snap right back to this red diamond, and then you can wind it forward, and it'll catch. And it doesn't take much to catch it. It doesn't take much effort at all. It just, you start getting some resistance, and you stop winding, and that's it. Now, you're not ready to take a picture when it gets to frame 1. I don't know if you can really see through this, but you can't see through the camera right now. The mirror is still locked up. This is your shutter cocking lever. It doesn't automatically cock the shutter. It's got quite a bit of resistance to it, but once you get used to it, you can start doing it with this finger or your little finger maybe. I'm going to do it like this just so you can see it, but you need to cock the shutter, and you can see that it opened up right there at the last bit, and you can probably kind of sort of a little bit see that now you can see through the camera. It's got a pretty nice little about a 3-foot minimum focus distance, and the screen is really nice to focus. I have found that I can focus with this at mid-chest height using, this is your focus. Without using the pop-up magnifier, I can focus at chest height and get pretty good focus. If you look at any of the pictures I have in Mike Ekman's site or on my website, most all of those I focused without using the pop-up magnifier. Anyways, we're back to this. The shutter is cocked. You can set your appropriate shutter speed. This one's a little bit tight. I need to open it up and relube the twist mechanism and loosen it a little bit because it is tighter than I would like. But you set your aperture, set your shutter speed. This is your shutter button, and you, okay, now that was on 1/4 of a second. That's why you heard the shutter. But you push your shutter button, and it takes a picture. Your viewfinder is going to go dark because the mirror is still up. The shutter is not cocked. But then what you do is you wind the film, and this is going to take a little over 2 winds for the beginning. So there's 1, 2, and a little bit. Now, this doesn't turn all the way around. It doesn't spin. It's a ratcheting system. And it only goes about, what is that, maybe 60 degrees? It's not all the way. So we'll try it, and we'll show you here on the side. Now, here's the wind. There's ratchet, ratchet, and click, and that's it. And it's not really a click. It's just it hits the end and it's done. You might think, based on all the other cameras that do a full, spin, 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 that this is a weird design, but it really works nice. And this is probably why people break it, is because it's easy to rag on it. It's really easy to just do it's handy. It's junk, 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 and you're there. It's a little bit of good design there. Anyhow, Another thing that I have noticed, I don't know if it's with mine, I don't know if mine's just out of adjustment and I need to go back in and look at it. There's a lot of levers and linkages inside this thing. What I have found is that if I don't press the shutter button all the way, sometimes I'll go to advance the film, and it's, you know, this is why you got to be gentle all the time. I go to do that first ratchet and it doesn't want to go anywhere. The problem is that the shutter button didn't get depressed all the way. The shutter button does multiple things while this camera is while it's actuating. It stops down the aperture, it releases the mirror so it can lock up, then it takes the picture, but it also releases an interlock so that you can advance the film. And if you don't push it all the way, sometimes the interlock doesn't release. But what I have found is that if you didn't push it all the way and the interlock didn't release, luckily you can still press it again. It won't take another picture because you haven't cocked the shutter or done anything, but you can push it again and it usually will release the interlock, and then you can advance the film normally. So that's just kind of a minor irritation. It doesn't really hurt anything. I'll reiterate that cocking the shutter takes more force than you would think to start with. It's got a pretty hefty spring on it, but it is a smooth action, and it doesn't have a sudden jarring tightness or anything like that, so you'll feel comfortable with it. It's just probably more force than you're expecting. That's frame 8. I'm going to speed the shutter up a little bit here. Oh, would help if I... Okay, that's frame 11. I think that's about it. So I released the shutter, but I hadn't cocked it yet, and so now it winds on. So that's something to be aware of, is that if you happen to push the shutter before you cock the shutter, if you push the shutter release before you've cocked the shutter, it thinks that your shutter's cocked, it does everything, the interlock flips, and you have to advance the film before you can cock the shutter now. So that's another, probably a way that this thing can get messed up, is if you push on the shutter release, the shutter cocking lever after you've pushed the shutter release, you can mess things up. So anyways, that's I think that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me. I'm in the 127 Film Shooters group on Facebook and Vintage Camera Collectors on Facebook, and you can comment on this video one way or another. Shout out to Jeff Bradford, who sold me this 10-pack or 20-pack or whatever it was of Perut's 127 film. The film itself was absolute trash, but it has been so handy to have all these backing papers and spools and whatnot. I have 2 rolls of it left, and I am very grateful for them. And he sold them to me at a very reasonable price. Anyways, I think that's it. Komaflex S camera from Kawa. It is my new favorite 127 camera. If you have one and you would like me to take a look at it and possibly fix it, I am open to that. Get a hold of me and we'll see what we can work out. Meanwhile, happy shooting. Shoot some 127 film. Shoot medium format. Shoot anything. Talk to you later.